A 3-in-1. I went for a run this morning in the Adidas Solarboost 3 and I realized something, that I had taken this pair of shoes close to 50 kilometers and I had another couple of pairs of shoes that were either close to 50 Ks or, in the case of the Boston 10, over 50 Ks. And 50 Ks is where I normally give my progressive thoughts on a pair of running shoes. I do accept that 50 kilometers in a running shoe is not enough to give a full review, but that's why I don't call it a full review. I think 50 Ks is the point where a shoe should have broken in to how it will feel like for the rest of its life, and if it needs more time past 50 Ks, that's simply too much for the average runner. And that 50 Ks also gives me an opportunity to get anywhere between 5 and 8 sort of runs in a shoe and spend some time in it while not running to see how it performs in non-running duties. Of the shoes that I'm talking about in this review, one of these is technically the only current model. That's the Adidas Boston 10. The Hoka Carbon X2 has been superseded by the X3, and since I posted my initial impressions, the X3 has been made more widely available. I've had a chance to check out some of the reviews on what people are saying about the X3, and the conclusion that most people have come to on the X3 is pretty much where I'm at with the X2. So you could take my thoughts on the X2 and apply those equally to the X3 if you are considering that shoe. With the Solarboost 3, let's be honest, the Solarboost 3 and 4 are identical for the most part. There is a very slight change to the upper. The upper has now got a mesh that's been made of like 50% recycled materials. It looks very slightly different, but all other stats are identical. The weight, the drop, the midsole, it's pretty much the same shoe. So I can say with confidence that my comments on the Solarboost 3 will apply equally to the Solarboost 4. Now, enough of that. Let's talk about these shoes in no specific order, starting with the Hoka Carbon X2. The Hoka Carbon X2 is a shoe that took me some time to understand. Its headline feature is the carbon plate, and typically with carbon plated shoes, you would expect these to be race ready shoes that are built to go fast over longer distances. In my initial impressions review, I did talk about the fact that I didn't necessarily feel the benefits of having a carbon fiber plate in the X2. I wasn't sure if it was how Hoka had implemented the carbon plate in the shoe, or if it was because the foam housing the carbon plate is a little bit firmer than some of the other foams that I've used in shoes that have a carbon plate. But what I started to understand the more and more I ran in the X2 was that this is not a race day shoe. That should have been obvious to me because Hoka have the Rocket, and the Rocket is supposedly their race ready shoe. Once I understood that about the X2 and I started to treat it like a daily trainer, I enjoyed running in the shoe, and I will continue to enjoy running in the shoe. I fully intend to keep running in it. It has a really nice fit, a nice feel on foot. The upper is really nice and breathable. There is that signature Hoka fit with a roomy toe box that isn't sloppy, and there is a really nice feeling underfoot. It's also one of the most comfortable carbon fiber plated shoe that I've walked in. I think that's in large part because the foam is so dense. Typically with carbon plated shoes that have a super soft foam, they generally have a higher stack and can tend to be unstable when you're not using them for running. And for non-running activities at least, I think this is probably the most comfortable carbon fiber shoe. But there is an issue with the shoe, and that's its price. In Australia, the X2 and X3 both retail for $300, and at that price, it's an absolute no-brainer that I would not recommend the X2 or X3. It's just too expensive for what it is. If you were looking for a carbon plated shoe that was race ready, the Vaporfly Next% 2 is only marginally more expensive. And if you're looking for a bit of a do-it-all trainer, you've got a lot of better options out there that are much cheaper. Take for example the shoes in Hoka's own catalogue. There's the Mach 4, which is pretty easily available at discounted prices given how long it's been around, and that the Mach 5 should be released soon-ish. And then there's the, dare I say it, the Rincon 3, that both offer a lightweight package that can still do those daily trainer duties. Shoe number 2 is the Adidas Boston 10. The Boston 10 is probably the most surprising shoe that was released in 2021, and probably so far in 2022 for me, for 2 reasons. Number 1 is its design. The Boston 10 is totally different to every other Boston before it. It is high stack, looks quite beastly, and is not what we've come to expect from the Boston series. Low stack, lightweight, but that kind of leads to what is the most surprising thing about the Boston, and that is, despite the change in looks, it actually performs very much like what I've come to know about the Boston series, which is also probably the biggest issue with the Boston 10. When I say that the Boston 10 performs like what I've come to expect from a Boston shoe, that is a shoe that is most comfortable at faster paces. And I'd even go as far to say that the Boston 10 is not an ideal shoe for easier efforts. In fact, for me, I found it quite uncomfortable running those easier type of kilometers. While we've come to associate high stack with stacks of soft cushion, it's not always the case. And the Light Strike and Light Strike Pro that have been used in this package have a more responsive feel on foot and definitely feel nicely cushioned but firm. That, along with the way that the upper fits, which is quite tight, lightly padded, doesn't make for an overly comfortable experience if you're wanting to log those low and slow types of days running. And that leaves me on the fence with recommending a shoe like the Boston 10. It is $260 here in Australia, which is quite pricey for a shoe that is not overly versatile. The Boston 10 is not a shoe I would recommend to someone wanting to have a single shoe rotation. It is absolutely a shoe that you would need to complement with something else, like a max cushion or daily trainer type of shoe. While that kind of seems enough to not recommend the shoe, I actually really enjoy running those tempo days in this shoe. It is a nice package. It's different to have something that is built for those faster paces, that is a higher stack, and I really like the materials and the construction quality of the shoe itself. Overall, I'd probably say give this shoe a miss if you are looking for something that can do a bit of everything. But if you are in the market for a shoe that can take care of those faster paced runs or training efforts, then the Boston 10 is worth a look if you can get it at lower than whatever retail price it is that the shoe is. That was like duplication. At lower than the retail price wherever it is that you live. Finally, shoe number 3, which also happens to be the easiest shoe of these 3 to sum up, is the Solarboost 3. This is an excellent option for a shoe that kind of sits somewhere in between being a daily trainer and a max cushion shoe. It is incredibly comfortable on foot, and it offers the absolute best experience that I've had running in an Adidas shoe with a Boost midsole. I don't think anything can compete with the Ultra Boost as far as finding that intersect between being a performance shoe while also having some pretty significant lifestyle chops. But if we are going to talk about running in a shoe with a Boost midsole, the Solarboost trumps the Ultra Boost in nearly every way. The upper is much more comfortable, the fit is heaps more forgiving, especially around the forefoot, and the Boost is also tuned very differently on the Solarboost compared to the last Ultra Boost that I ran in, which was the 21. It is soft while responsive, and with that type of midsole mated to the upper in the Solarboost and the padding that's in the tongue and in the heel, it just makes for an incredibly versatile shoe that can really take care of a lot of activities. A little bit of those faster efforts, it can definitely go low and slow, and it can do those activities in between. The best thing about the Solarboost 3 is that it's still available. Even though the Solarboost 4 is out and is virtually identical to this shoe, you can still get a pair of the Solarboost 3s at a really good price. If you are looking for a shoe that kind of fits that daily trainer category, something that can do a bit of everything, that is comfortable while you're walking around, doing some of the stuff at the gym, but also being a pretty serious running shoe, this is something I definitely think you should check out. I'm really keen to hear what you think about any of the shoes that I've covered, whether you agree or disagree. Leave those thoughts in the comments below, but until the next video, laters.